Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping back into some Nuclear Revenge. Our first story today comes to us from Poco the Fox. Make me quit, get reported for your illegal company practices. Let's jump right in. In all honesty, this account is mostly a throwaway to distance myself from my main account where I still talk to people in the area this happened. On one hand, given the time that's passed since this particular revenge happened, I could probably get away with it, but on the other hand, there's a chance that this could come back to bite me. It's not that I did anything illegal, but many may argue it was morally wrong at the time, and I probably could have handled the situation a whole heck of a lot better. So, on to the story. At one point in my life, I found myself bored. I needed spending cash, but at the same time, like any typical college student, I needed a job that would work around my class hours. Enter C Corp, not the real name. C Corp was a locally owned chain of gas stations in the southeastern part of Georgia, and parts of Florida. I forget the total number of stations, but it was under 50 if that matters. I applied and was given a simple clerking position where I would work weekends and 2 nights a week, for a total of about 32 hours a week on average, sometimes more, sometimes less. I worked there for about a year when I was offered a position to help reopen a store, renovated after a fire, with the promotion to assistant manager. My hours were going to obviously change, but by the same token, I gained better pay and a new day shift which would help things out. To be quite honest, I even debated taking some time off from school to concentrate on the job, as it was entirely possible I would be promoted to manager of my own store before long. There were veiled hints and suggestions of that very thing happening in a few months as it were. I never got that far, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. It didn't take long for me to start noticing some issues with the store and the company as a whole, issues which I did my level best to correct. We were nearing hunting season, turkey and then deer, and in an effort to cater to this, the store started getting in several pallets of ammunition. So now we had to figure out how to display the various types of big pew pew shells and big pew pew bullets, while also doing our level best to ensure things didn't get in the way. It was around this time that I found myself speaking with the store manager, having been called on the carpet, as the saying goes, for refusing to sell ammunition to a customer. I explained to the manager that I had attempted to check ID on the customer who refused to give it. So, I told the manager that I knew full well this was illegal, as ID was required by state law, and furthermore, you had to be 18 to buy them. That started me on the path that would lead to my termination a few weeks later. I started noticing company memos popping up in the office, all that dealt with company practices regarding ammunition. One even went so far as to say that it was a terminable offense to refuse a sale of big pew pew shells to a customer regardless of age. That one actually vanished a few days after it went up, with me suspecting someone in the legal department realized the trouble they could get into with it. However, the flow of ammo didn't stop. A week before my termination, things got worse. The state in question has the lottery, of which the lion's share is scratch-off tickets. You know the type. Pay $1, scratch off, and hope you win something. Now, the lottery states on the back of every single ticket that the retailer who sold it must pay up to $599 in winnings. Anything above that has to be claimed at the central lottery office in the state's capital. Retailers are warned that should they refuse to pay this, there are instructions on how to do this with a money order, then they can be fined by the lottery commission or worse. Imagine my surprise then when I'm written up for following the lottery commission policy and paying out on a $300 win for a customer. I was told point blank that company policy was not to pay out anything more than $100, regardless of what the lottery commission said. The final straw before my eventual termination, though honestly I quit, they still listed me as terminated, came when training another cashier. The very next day, the count came up short by exactly $100. I refused to sign the write-up, which meant the company would have to investigate it, or so I thought. Same day, the district manager called the store and made some veiled threats about calling the police over this, and left me with the note that if the count comes up $100 over today, he won't say anything. Oh heck no, he didn't. I waited till the manager returned from her meeting, dropped all my keys on the counter, and told her directly, "I'm done." I walked out and didn't really look back. I was pissed. pissed at the treatment I'd been given over my time working there, pissed at being called a thief, pissed at what I knew the company was doing to my little community, and pissed that, as far as I could tell, they'd get away with it. That's when I hatched a plan of revenge. First and foremost, I needed to talk with a friend. One of my colleagues' buddies also worked for the county sheriff's office, so I plied him over with some good barbecue and a few beers, and then asked him, hypothetically speaking, what would happen to a company if it was found they were doing something illegal, like, selling ammunition when they shouldn't be, or something like that. He knew I'd recently left C Corp and the circumstances of why I left, so it didn't take long for him to ask just what was going on. So I spilled the beans, even including the reported theft I had been accused of. He was on the edge of his seat, even going so far as to note that the district manager's actions themselves were illegal, and told me to come meet with my friend's boss the next day to give a statement. So I did just that. I laid out everything, told about the memo about not refusing sales against state law, and then gave detailed information about the district manager's call, the incident itself, the other things I had witnessed regarding illegal practices by the company, though not mentioned here. It took the better part of 4 hours to get everything told and typed out. By the way the detective acted, I got the impression I had either given him one heck of a caseload or broken some case right open. Fun. However, I wasn't really done yet. I had one more call to make. That one would prove pretty simple and short, and involve me calling the Lottery Commission and telling them about the company's policy which went against the lottery agreement. I was assured they'd look into things and that my information would be kept secret. I just had to sit back and wait. The fallout. 2 or 3 weeks later, our local paper ran a story on the front page, talking about a multiple department sting that happened in our area. The sting was investigating illegal sale of pew-pews, alcohol, and ammunition to minors. In that raid, C Corp had been hit hard, with several of their stores being shut, and several managers and district managers being arrested on various charges tied to this illegal activity. The company itself was facing severe, in the 7-figure range fines from the state, and it was being called into question whether or not they had the proper licenses to sell ammunition and pew-pews in the first place. The only mention about what the district manager had said to me came in the form of one of the investigating officers noting that the company had resorted to blackmail in an attempt to silence anyone who dared question the company policies or practices. The stores did remain open, but you could tell that the managers were seriously nervous about what the future held. Sales of ammunition and pew-pews stopped completely, and overnight though. About a week after the raid by the police, lotto tickets of all kinds simply vanished from the stores. Big signs out front simply read, "We do not sell lotto." The validation machines were gone, the scratch-off ticket areas lay empty, lottery was not in the building. I can only guess what happened in that case, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Lottery Commission sent people in with winning tickets only to have those people turned away. The fact that they lost their lottery sales would point to it being a serious issue at the very least. That, or the Lottery Commission decided to distance themselves from the company, which was already under federal investigation. Yes, the ammunition and pew-pews thing went federal. Ultimately, the company was a shell of its former self. About half the gas stations ended up closing due to no longer being profitable, and what stations didn't close were just shells of their former selves. The company eventually declared bankruptcy after a final scandal brought them another round of state and federal fines. In that case, they were busted for price gouging after raising the gas price per gallon to about $6 a gallon in cities where they had no other competition. This happening just prior to a pending tropical storm. Today, it's been close to 15 years since this all went down. C Corp doesn't exist any longer. After declaring bankruptcy, most of the stores were sold off to a competitor, who ended up closing all but 5 or 6 of the stores due to redundancies. A whole host of, honestly, innocent people ended up out of work simply because the store decided to F over one guy who wanted to do the right thing by the law and state policies. Several of the corporate staff were given 2- and 3-year suspended sentences, while others ended up paying personal fines on top of what the company was facing. The company has become something of a warning to others about what not to do when an employee voices a concern, and above and beyond that, why it's a good idea to follow the letter of the law exactly as it's written, regardless of if it hinders your bottom line or not. I sometimes think back on the whole affair and wonder just what they hoped to achieve with that blackmail attempt. Some part of me thinks that the district manager honestly thought it was the best option, and may have even been trying to help out an employee he liked. That was something that always bugs me looking back. Every interaction I had with the guy was a good one, right up to him grooming me to be another store manager. So maybe he was trying to protect me. Then again, he could have just been the butthole I assumed, and that was him showing his true colors. I guess we'll never know. He moved out of the area a few years later, and I sure as heck wasn't about to talk to him again. Not after everything that happened. So that's my story, how I destroyed an entire gas station chain. Well, Wifey and I used to be independent operators of a major convenience store chain here in Canada. Used to have an owl on it but doesn't anymore, if that gives you an idea of which one it was. And I can tell you firsthand that they are shady as f***. All the managers and district managers and market managers care about is the bottom line and doing whatever they can to pad that bottom line as much as they can to put the fat bonuses in their pockets. Will I ever work for a convenience store chain again? Absolutely not. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our second story today comes to us from SJ86. Rule number 1, don't cheat on me. Let's jump right in. In 2008, I met this amazingly awesome girl in school. Let's call her CR. I was 21 and she was just about to turn 19, and we both knew what love was for the first time in our lives. We were both going to a community college, me for theater design and her for education. We lived about half an hour apart, but that was nothing more than a minor inconvenience because we spent every free moment between classes together. Come to think of it, that slight distance was actually pretty nice because being home at least forced us to focus on homework and taking care of ourselves, and visiting each other at home was that much more special. CR graduated with her associates in 2009 and moved away to a state school to finish up her degree in early childhood special education. Like before, the distance was not a concern because it was a short train ride away and I'd spend 1 or 2 weekends a month down there with her. I proposed to her on Valentine's Day 2010. School wasn't really my thing and I ended up enlisting in the USAF that following May and got moved halfway across the country to a place neither of us had ever imagined visiting. However, like before, we wouldn't let distance get in our way. Now, it should be noted that her mom did not like me. I still don't know why, but she was always the loudest, rudest, most annoying, and disrespectful seabag I've ever met. She was from the city, and she married into a family of farmers that owned the land since the 1870s, so that may explain part of her malice. From here on, Evil B is EB. Another thing to know is that I have a great memory, and this will be important later on in the story. Anyway, back to the military. I had a 2-week break between my training and leaving for my first and only duty station, which just happened to be over Christmas and New Year's. Even though we were engaged, we hadn't really put any consideration into actually getting married. She wanted something small with her family and cousins, and I was completely okay with going to a courthouse and getting it over with. I don't want to sound like I was trying to pressure her into that, but the way I saw it, I would be living in a barracks in a few weeks, and being married would get me a full monthly housing allowance, which I would save to have a wedding ceremony when we had time in another year or two. Basically, get married now, don't tell anyone, because they would all get hella upset for not being involved, and have a fake wedding ceremony that would include both of our families and friends. It turns out that because I was living in barracks, I wasn't allowed to collect the housing allowance, and when, 6 months later, they realized I was actually married, kicked me out, and made me get a house on base. Either way, we didn't get married when I was home on leave, and took an Amtrak train out west. I highly recommend traveling cross-country by train if you have the time. The first time we were able to see each other after that was during her spring break, which was the first part of March. CR and I finally eloped in a courthouse and spent the next few days glued to each other like every young married couple should. I flew back home for a couple weeks in June, and this is when things started to unravel. Easter Seals, for those who don't know, runs summer camps for special needs kids, and my new wife volunteered to be a counselor for the last 7 weeks of the summer. The last time I saw her that summer was just after her June birthday when I dropped her off at camp. The rest of the summer was hit or miss getting in touch with her since she was on the clock 24 hours a day for 5 days a week, and I completely understood her commitment to those kids. When she was back in school the following fall, she became increasingly distant, making excuses about how her phone would be randomly dead at oddly predictable times every week. She flew out to spend Christmas with me in our new house, technically a crappy, mostly empty duplex, and things felt amazing like they had been. After that, however, she went back to being super reclusive, like she was the previous semester. Fast forward to May 2012, I took a whole month of leave to fly home for her graduation and to help her move in with me. I barely recognized her. Every bit of CR's communication with me was forced and so phony that I should have known what was really happening all along. She had set up what she called mock interviews with a couple grade schools near her hometown, and I actually believed that she was doing it just to get experience interviewing. What an idiot. When I finally started to catch on to how serious she was about getting a job in our home state, she broke down crying and made it seem like I was forcing her to choose between me and her career. And of course, I wanted to put our marriage before anything else. Obviously, I returned to base without her. A couple weeks later, I pressured her into telling me what the heck was going on. She fell in love with one of her fellow camp counselors and let the affair go on for about 9 months, with claims that she was going to tell me but didn't know when. The usual, too guilty to tie your own shoes BS, and she honestly expected me to walk away from our relationship right then and there. No, I fought tooth and nail to hold us together for 2 months before filing the divorce. I'm skipping a bunch of sappy details here, but the divorce was filed late August and became final that December. Mandatory 90-day waiting period in my state. The pain I suffered in that one-sided relationship is something I would never wish on anybody unless I truly deserved it. Apparently, Evil B whispered all kinds of lies to her about how I joined the military to get away from her, and actually had the gall to blame me for all the crying and misery her oldest child was going through. My soon-to-be ex never admitted who was blaming me for everything, but I was really close to her dad and siblings, so I can't imagine that they would ever suspect me. But Evil B was so manipulative that by Halloween, they had all turned against me. At that point, I had it. I was near suicidal, and my anxiety attacks were hitting basically every day. I was miserable, tired of being lied to, tired of the slander, tired of being the bad guy when I was the one who was attacked here. It started with sending texts to her brothers and sisters saying, "Hey, I'm actually your brother-in-law. Nice to know that we don't keep secrets, right?" CR exploded, but that was just the beginning. I wrote a 3,000-word letter explaining in every detail I could recall exactly what happened. The fact that we were married, including copies of the marriage license and certificate, our plans for the future, and how I was the only one living up to our expectations, where she met the guy she was effing behind my back, his name, address, phone number, camp counselor name, so CR would have a harder time refuting it, and a bunch of other information that she made me keep secret from them. I sent copies to everyone in her extended family as well. Well, everyone I had addresses for. Her roommates, the summer camp she worked at, close professors she had brought up in old conversations, and the principal of the school she ended up working at. Calling the fallout catastrophic is an understatement. Her super devout Catholic family basically disowned her. Her reputation at her former school was shattered, and the tension at her new job was apparently high enough that CR was forced to resign from her position before Christmas break started. Getting those secrets off my chest was the most cathartic moment of my life. Brutal, but completely deserved. I don't understand how people can't just say, "Hey, it's not working anymore. I don't want to be with you. Bye." Check out both OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.